and welcome to our weekly Tuesday webinar. I'm Yomika Bennett, Executive Director of the New York Charter Schools Association. I'm joined by Susie Carello, Executive Director of the SUNY Charter Schools Institute, David Frank, Executive Director of the Charter Schools Office at NYSED, Aaron Cochran, Managing Director, Policy and Operations at New York City Department of Education, and Corey Callahan from the New York City Charter Center. Today we'll follow our usual format. I'll share updates from the association. We'll hear updates from David, Susie, and Aaron, then take questions from the Q&A before turning to New York City DOE questions. Governor Cuomo announced today that he will sign the executive order requiring school districts to provide the New York State Department of Health with daily data on the number of people, students, and staff who have tested positive for COVID-19. The information will be publicly available on a new online COVID report card data tracking dashboard beginning tomorrow.
Yomika's dog has some editorializing.
We love puppies.
To share with the governor, yeah.
But I think this is a plus, actually. I'm sure Susie agrees.
Oh, thank you. Information reported to DOH includes how many tests were administered, what type of tests, and the results. In addition, information on whether the school is providing remote, hybrid, or in-person instruction and the number of students and staff on site will also be required. The information will come from three sources: school districts, local departments of health, and labs. As of right now, charters are not expected to participate, but we will let you know if that changes. Last week, the governor signed an executive order that continued the authorization to allow remote board meetings. So that extension is through October 4th. That's an update that I know is important to many of you. The requirement that school districts that are offering remote instructions this year that they also must provide meals is also in effect through October 4th. So just as last school year, school districts, when everyone went remote, had to provide meals. That executive order requiring that going forward is in effect now through October 4th. We want to give our friends at New York City DOE a big shout out and celebrate that the DOE calendar has been posted. You can access that at the link in the chat. The 2020 census count is still happening. A complete and accurate count helps ensure federal dollars are shared fairly among states and communities. As you know, the census impacts everything from funding roads to schools to hospitals. Census Bureau set the September 30th deadline to complete the count, although the federal courts just issued an injunction to stop the Bureau from implementing that early closure. We can't afford to take the risk. Please spread the word about the importance of completing the census. 10 minutes to complete the census sets the bar for education funding for the next 10 years. Just as we fight every year for funding, we should be fighting for a complete and accurate census count for our schools and for our communities. New York currently ranks 32nd in census counts at 86.6%. Idaho boasts 98.3%. You'll see the link to the census in the chat. Please encourage everyone to fill that out. Just as much as, like I said, we advocate for funding, this should be a part of our advocacy. Finally, before I turn to David, Susie, and Aaron, I want to make sure you saw the Save the Date for our annual conference, which will be held virtually on October 21st to the 23rd. We're lining up some great content here, so be sure to check for updates. This Thursday, please join us for a review of the Privacy 2D law, which goes into effect October 1st. And then next Thursday, our deep dive webinar will discuss insurance coverage considerations in the current context. Having been updated, I'm going to now turn to David, Susie, and Aaron to see if there are any updates. Hi, Susie. You want to start?
Sure. It's always it's like stare down the screen to see who's going to jump in first. So many of you have already kicked off school. Others of you are prepping to kick off school. The fluidity continues. And one of the things that we've learned over and over again in 2020, and the fall has provided these lessons again, is that you get started with what you think your plan is, and then something changes. And so we know that that's happening with many of you. I want to thank all of you for the, I know, extra amount of time. You've done a plan, you figured out the details of that plan. Something shifts or changes, you do something a little different with that plan. I just want to thank you bunches for all the extra work I know all the team members are putting in, and then B, for calling us and keeping us updated. The constant theme through all of these plans is make sure that even if things shift, you may thought you were going to do partially remote, now you're going to do fully remote for a while, see how things shake down into October. Make sure that as you have these multiple scenarios that you're planning for and implementing, that your records of student attendance are very clear and what your bars are for keeping student counts those days. And similarly, we're also hearing from a lot of schools, and we'd be happy to take your best practices and share them back out. Talking about identifying, contacting those students that are still definitely in summer mode. We know that happens the week after Labor Day anyway in a non-pandemic year. And this year we anticipate that that's going to happen a little bit longer as school start days, et cetera, are slightly changing. So make sure that you're documenting those efforts as well. And again, it would be great to have your best practices, tips and tricks. We'll be happy to share those out with everyone. I think that's the Institute's update.
Great, thank you, Susie. David or Aaron?
Sure,
Feel free to.
I can go.
Yep.
So similarly, we're excited for schools starting, or schools that have already started this academic year. And we know that there are some operational questions and academic challenges. And to echo what Susie was saying, it's so important to share effective practices with your colleagues, and we would be happy to help facilitate that. And I know that the other authorizers and the association would be happy to as well. We've put out an updated fall monitoring and oversight guide so that you can see what's expected of Board of Regents authorized charter schools and what we're up to as your authorizer. But I gave a link to that in the chat. Also, to build upon the mention before regarding Education Law 2D going into effect in October, we sent around today some free resources around data security in an online setting. So certainly that's through the charter school. So take a look at those resources. SED has actually has a data privacy officer, and although it's a mighty office of one, she would be more than happy to help with any questions that your schools might have, particularly as you're operating in a remote environment. So check out SED's data privacy resources also in the chat. So Erin, off to you.
Thank you, David. No big updates from our end. We are continuing to review reopening plans, and a heads up to our renewal schools to look for an email this week for updated renewal data submission templates and guidance on how to submit your renewal application in CHIP. And that's all we got.
All right, thank you. So we have one question for you today before we turn it over to the Q&A, and it's about enrollment. So as families are adjusting schedules to remote, hybrid, in-person, and alternate school schedules, and deciding how to cope with COVID-19 risks, some families are choosing different schools and to delay kindergarten. The shifts impact enrollment. Do you have any advice for schools as they are managing enrollment shifts and meeting their enrollment numbers?
Yeah, enrollment is a big issue this academic year, and we do require Board of Regents authorized charter schools to be at least 85% of your enrollment. So it's very important to stay in compliance with your charter. But the strategies that seem to work with other schools, and again, this gets back to the sharing effective practices piece, is to just engage families, make them feel part of a community, have virtual events for them, If you're able to, even supplement your remote instruction with some small, socially distanced, safe in-person events, whether that's a screening or some schools, I know especially outside of New York City, are doing some small start of year events, like come meet your teacher from a socially distanced place or outside, or I know one school started the school year at a drive-in movie theater. So there's a lot of different things that you can do, but use your autonomy, think outside the box. Also, as you're enrolling students, make sure that you're referring back to your reopening plans. How do you tell, what's your metric for an enrolled student? What's your metric for attendance? So how do you know that they're participating or not? And make sure that that is equally applied across the board to your students, so that it's a transparent process. You can point back to it, refer to it, and it's evenly applied.
Great, thank you, David. Susie or Aaron?
Nothing really to add what David said, other than to just reiterate, definitely continue to engage with your families. If you haven't, continue to touch base with them, to listen, to see if you need to pivot to make something more sustainable or a more possible option. And then just always a reminder, we understand that with a lower enrollment, mainly different budget situations, different choices you may need to make. So please keep us in the loop as you are faced with these choices and decisions, so that we can just be on the same page with you as you are exploring what your options are.
I'll underscore that last piece for SUNY schools. We do not intend to ask for any sort of enrollment update outside of the quarterly budget reports that you provide to us. But if you are in a situation where you are falling below what that collar is in your charter in terms of total enrollment, please reach out to us and let us know. We are, fresh out, or we are long out, maybe I should say, of, the perfect magic fairy wand to fix it. But we do want to be supportive and helpful in helping you think about ways to manage definitely finances through this year. So do let us know if there is an issue that you're worried about.
Okay, great. Thank you very much. So we are, speaking of finances, we're going to drop a snap, or put up a snap poll, just to ask if folks can give us any feedback on your payments received from the districts, whether or not you received your payment in full. So you'll see that dropped in shortly, and in the meantime, I'll turn it over to Anna for Q&A.
No matter how many months I've been doing this, the mute. So I'll pause and give everyone a second to respond to the September 1st payment question, and then we can share out folks' responses after we get to a couple of Q&A questions. All right, so folks can answer that to the best of their ability. I think it'll be helpful for all of us here, and potentially for you all as well, to see where everyone is stacking up with that, because I know that was a big question in the last couple of weeks. So David, I think this first question is for you, and it's one, to be honest, that has come up in the past, and I feel like we have not perfectly answered it collectively. So I will share responsibility for that, but around the NYSETEL administration. So typically there is a time limit in which students have to be assessed after the first day of school. And so there has been an extension of the typical 10-day window. And I think really what this boils down to is what counts as the first day of school. Is it only when a student has returned in person because the test cannot be administered remotely? Is this sort of a do your best kind of thing, or is there more specific guidance that you're aware of from SED?
Yeah, so there was a July 15th memo that SED sent around regarding this, and so I would refer back to that memo. But but there's extensive leeway that was granted. So there is that 30-day window, and by start of school, SED is referring to the commencement of the educational program. So we know that, you know, your billing, there's no differentiation between your billing when you're in school or when you're in a physical building or remote. Similarly, there's no differentiation of the start of the school year. So those days start when your academic program starts, whether that's remote or in person. Regarding the NISTL, schools really, they have two options. So one is that they can ask students to come in to do one-on-one administration of that assessment, and in a socially distanced way. We know that won't be feasible for everyone. And so in that SED memo, and Anna, I'll send it to you after this again so you can get this out, but there is an ability to be interim, and I forget the exact terminology, so you'll have to excuse me, but it's like an interim label.
Interim classification, yeah.
Yeah, interim classification.
Yeah.
And so I would, so that is a provision that is in the SED memo, that you can provide those services to your students. I'll follow up with our Office of Bilingual Lead and World Languages to see what kind of Title III ramifications that might have. But I would, not to put my DOE colleagues on the spot, but I would refer to them as to whether or not there's an ATS classification that recognizes that interim status, given that some of our students just can't come in, whether they're, you know, they worry about their health and safety, or they're under a mandatory quarantine order, which might preclude them, tripping over my words today, preclude them from being assessed. And so I'll make sure everyone gets that memo, and I'll certainly follow up. But I think flexibility and implementing these requirements to the greatest extent possible, which is echoed in our special ed guidance, is really the name of the game as we commence the school year. Sometimes I try to shed my bureaucratic bubble as often as I can, to the greatest extent that I can.
That's helpful. Thank you. And yeah, happy to help get that memo out, because I know that question continues to come up.
Thank you. I'm going to send it to you right now, Anna.
Perfect. We will put it on our website and get it out with the resources from today, so people can look for that later this evening. So then, David, Susie, and Aaron would love for all of you to weigh in on this. Yomika as well, because the question is about Secretary DeVos's memo stating that state should not, or position stating that state should not expect a similar waiver for the spring of 21 for state exams that was issued in very many cases for this past spring. So the question is, do any of us have any information about that? I think the technical answer on that is probably not any more than Connie, you do, but would love Susie, David, Aaron, Yomika, your observations, crystal balls. I've shared my crystal ball on this topic in some previous conversations, and would just love any and all reflections, because this was a very bold statement that she made.
David, I know it's your organization that's in charge of this thing, so I will refrain from giving anything more than my old wizened opinion on this, which is I think it would be an extraordinary opportunity for all of us to see with a common ruler what happened. What has happened thus far in terms of learning losses for students. Maybe there are some students who've made extraordinary gains. That would be really intriguing to understand as well. And it's part of the I think it's part of the overall opportunity we have for future generations. Hopefully, a future generation will not have this pandemic experience, but it's certainly an opportunity for future generations as we look to just a wholesale shift to remote instruction last year and the blended instruction this year, and to see where students were able to maintain their own capacities and where they might have which groups of kids, because of course we all know our students are usually the most vulnerable students, the ones who need us the most. And so a set of statewide assessments would be super helpful in us continuing to support those kids that need us the most. So that's my 2 cents worth. My crystal ball for the state education department or the federal education department has shattered long ago.
Yeah.
I'm going to jump in just ahead of you for a second, David, if I can.
Sure, sure.
From my sort of old government hat and say 2020 is 2020, 2021 is 2021, and there's a long time between now and then. So we'll see.
Yeah, there's absolutely a long time, and actually, it was interesting that in the press releases I saw go out after that announcement, not only did they have Betsy DeVos quote, but they also had Senator Patty Murray, who is the Democrat from Washington State, who expressed support for that Secretary DeVos opinion. So I think it's probably very rare for Patty Murray to agree with the Trump administration, but she did. You know, it's to quote, or to use a tactic that Secretary DeVos' boss uses, I'll say, I've heard from some people that they would be happy if tests were administered at the end of this academic year. Certainly there are a lot of factors at play, and it's probably too early to tell, but I would strongly urge all of our schools to engage in an academic program that is rigorous and that prepares students for proficiency, whether or not there's a state exam or not. That it's our duty as educators to carry out that mission. And I think our most successful schools, the highest performing schools in the state, educate students agnostic to whether or not there's a state exam. They're in it for providing high quality educational opportunities for kids, and the state exam is just one assessment along the road.
And for folks who weren't able to join us last Thursday for our discussion of a partnership with NWEA, if you're interested in learning more about that, please reach out. There are some opportunities for some fall baseline assessments as well as end of year assessments that could be helpful in a come what may lack of fairy wands kind of environment. So before I turn it over to Corey and Aaron for New York City specific content, we can throw those poll results up. Curious to see someone already entered in the chat that the Buffalo district has yet to pay, but has been giving sort of a day by day, any day now kind of update. Becky, can you share the poll results? All right, so thanks to the 40-something folks, and good to know that that responded, and good to know that the vast majority in full and on time. Hopefully that's helpful to authorizers to see it all. For those 10 or 11 folks where it was not in full and on time, please let us know. I know John is having weekly conversations with folks in Buffalo, and so definitely really helpful for us and for the authorizers to be aware early and often. How about that? Great. So with that, Corey and Aaron, I will hand it over to you.
Thanks, Anna. Good afternoon, everyone. Hi, Aaron.
Hello.
How's it going? So another week, a lot of issues. I just wanted to start by saying we have another call this Friday with DOE and DOH. I know that folks are having a bunch of health related questions, particularly as New York City has taken some steps that go further than what happened or what was put into the NICED guidance document or the State Department of Health guidance. So just want to remind schools that, you know, that was something that was allowable under the guidance that was put out. And so folks should keep tuning in, but you know, I'm getting a lot of emails from schools asking about why something might be different. And so New York City might have a few issues that are different. So please continue to check in on those calls. If you haven't joined for a while, I'm going to put the Zoom link in the chat right now. And then Erin, I will turn to you. So yay, DOE calendar released. I know it's already been posted here, but of course, with everything that happens, then we get more questions. So I already was in contact with DOE today. I know folks are having a lot of questions about what does it mean now when DOE has either remote only day or is closed for charter schools, whether you're in co-located space or private space, you know, are the buildings open? Is school food open? Is transportation open? So all of those things, and Erin, correct me if you have gotten an update in the last hour since we checked in, but that is something that you guys do not know right now. Is that right?
Correct. We are still working on that.
So they're working on all that. I think the other issue that emerged on Friday, which I know Erin has already answered one question in the chat about this, but this also would potentially implicate extended use, right? So charters are going to have to apply for extended use permits, and then the cost for keeping the buildings open. So all of that to come. And then Erin, I'll just start with the extended use question because I did see you answer it in the chat, but we've been getting a lot of these. So I know on Friday, it was said that you guys were going to enforce the payment for services if schools in co-located space are staying past a certain time. Have any more details emerged or info you can share right now?
Nothing more to share at this time. It's still very much in development, and we hope to share soon.
Okay. The other thing I'll go to then is any updates on school nurses. I know we've heard from schools this week as schools are going back in. Anything schools should know about nurses?
Yes, so we are continuing to work with the teams that manage the nurses. And those teams are very much reaching out to schools. So if you are feeling like you have not heard about your nurse, please reach out to us at charterschools@schools.nyc.gov. I will put that in the chat. I am having technical difficulties, so I'm on my phone, so I'm going to do that in a minute. But let us know if you are not hearing something. Know that you may not hear until you get closer to your in-person start date. So if you are a charter that has told us that you are starting in person in October, you are going to hear after the schools that are starting in person in September. So just know that, and we'll continue to work to get you the information if you feel like you are not hearing it. We are continuing to work with schools who may in the past have not had an adequate medical room. So if you are one of those schools and you have not yet heard from us, please reach out so that we can get ahead of any issues that may need to be fixed there.
Got it. And then anything on buses?
So no updates on busing currently, but we hope to share one soon.
Okay. And then school food. I know that you shared the good news on Friday that schools that are their own SFA would still be able to participate in the DOE school food distribution if they needed to while they're remote or if students were not in school for certain days. Any other information? I know that, and also I should say before you correct me, that is only for the fall, that extension of the DOE school food. But is there any more information that schools should be looking for in terms of either if they are in part of the DOE school food, registering families to pick up at a certain location or any just general registration that needs to happen?
Sure. So because of the extension of the waiver, registration to pick up on remote days by any family your own school food authority or otherwise is no longer required. That may change once the waiver period has ended. So yes, so currently the plan is that pickup for students of charter schools on days that the students are remote will happen at their most convenient district school, and there's no need to do any registration.
And then last, or I shouldn't say last, two more questions just following up, and I saw one in the chat, is any update on Charter's accessibility to the Learning Bridges program, which is the daycare seats I think people have heard about.
We are continuing to confirm that. In the meantime, families are welcome to take the survey, which was an interest survey, if they would like to express their interest.
Got it. And then last kind of rollover question from Friday was, there is a list now of some testing sites that are prioritizing DOE staff. Is that available to charters as of now?
So we are still confirming that.
Okay. And then moving into some questions I saw in the chat and received a bunch this morning. DOE, I know, released a screening tool that all of their staff and students need to use. And then I think what we saw in Charter Weekly, or a special Charter Weekly this morning, is that every staff member entering into a co-located space must also use this app until the 21st. Is that right, Erin?
Correct. Until September 21st, anyone entering a building, a DOE building, must take this screener. It's just 4 basic questions. Staff can take the paper version instead, that we shared via a link. And it's a website. You can log on. If you have a DOE email, you can log on as a DOE employee. Otherwise, you can take it as a guest. We do understand that many charters have explored their own screeners for their own staff and their own students. So we are in the process of confirming what the guidance will be starting September 21st.
Got it. So I think the only thing I'll just add a little bit of urgency, because I see in the chat just folks getting very concerned because they're either announcing to parents their app and or have spent a lot of money on that. So anything these schools should be doing right now in terms of how, trying to really, if they were planning to use this, particularly here in the co-located space.
Nothing to share at this time. We understand the urgency.
Got it. Okay. So I think folks will stay on top of this, but understand that this is a big issue. Another question I got on the same topic, slightly different, instead of the must, is could charter schools, students, and families utilize this online screening tool, meaning they don't need to develop their own?
We are also continuing to look into that.
Got it. Okay. So, and I'll just add for that question, I think schools that were interested in that option are wanting to know if they would receive access to the information that you guys get downloaded from the app, obviously, because they would need some of that back data to potentially answer questions with track and trace or their own obligations as a school. So just putting that out there if you guys are into that.
Of course.
Thank you. And then I think we've seen it a lot in the press, but any updates on the ventilation reports that I think were all done or supposed to be done?
Yes. So the ventilation reports were sent out yesterday to the folks who are listed as principals in Galaxy to your DOE email. It was an automated report that went out. We realize most folks don't check their DOE emails regularly, so we would encourage you to check there. If you are listed as a charter principal in Galaxy, which hopefully if you are a charter principal, you are. And additionally, these ventilation reports are also publicly available on Find a School. So they will be listed with your charter if your charter is listed with that building in Find a School. If you have multiple sites and only one building is listed in Find a School for your site, you can find the ventilation report as well under the listing for one of your co-located district schools. So they are publicly available. They are in your DOE inbox, and please let us know if you have any questions.
I'm going to ask this question, and I know you are not on your phone, but if you're not getting DOE emails, Or how do we get the report if we don't have DOE emails? Or should they be emailing you, or what would you want them to do?
Yes, so if you are having trouble accessing the report via your DOE email, and again, hopefully you should have one and know your password, and we're happy to reset that and get you set up in Galaxy. But yes, so please reach out to charterschools@schools.nyc.gov, and I'm going to see if I can multitask. It's going to be very exciting. Autocorrect is not cooperating, so feel free to ask more questions if there are more.
Sure. Can charters participate in the mandatory COVID testing? This is the program announced last Tuesday as part of the UFT DOE's agreement. I know this question came out before, but just wanted to put it out there.
We are continuing to look into this, and thank you to the schools who have reached out to express your interest. That is helpful as we explore this question. And if you are a charter school that is interested in participating in this program, please continue to reach out at the email that I popped in the chat.
Great. And then Erin, I think I've just got a couple of things that I know you guys want to do reminders on in terms of CHIP, Regents waiver, and school quality report. So I just didn't want you to forget those.
Yes, thank you, Corey. I got a lot going on this phone right now. All right, so if you have not yet updated your CHIP contacts, please do so. If you are having trouble with your login, we are going to be doing some auditing tomorrow just to make sure no one has fallen through the cracks, that we know who the key contacts of each building are, so that we're able to connect folks related to COVID-19 investigations to the right people. So please continue to do that. Thank you so much to all of the people who have. I'm seeing so many updated contacts, and it's just fabulous. Reminder that the June Regents waivers are due to the state. We are collecting them through Eastern Suffolk BOCES by September 18th. We have a meaty list of folks that we are expecting Regents waivers for. A lot of high schools that we've typically seen Regents tests taken at. So if you are a charter school that typically has administered Regents, if you believe you have applied Regents waivers to your students, but you have not personally reported them to Eastern Suffolk BOCES, please do a little internal investigation just to make sure that that process has been completed. It's extremely important. We're already getting so many reach outs from other high schools, from district schools, from folks who are trying to get confirmation that these waivers have actually been submitted correctly, because if a waiver is not submitted down the line, it means the student probably may not be able to graduate on time. So we really want to avoid that. In addition to all of the other reasons why you should be reporting this data, we really want to make sure that students are not being penalized because this information was not passed to the state. So that's the June Regents waivers due September 18th through Eastern Suffolk BOCES. They're a fabulous team. They can help you get that data right into the state. And then we're going to be sharing more information about the August Regents waiver collection, since we know some schools have already reached out to us about that. So that is Regents waivers. And then the last piece is that the school quality report data, the New York City school quality report, data is due this Friday. We know a lot of schools really value the way that this allows you to showcase to families who may be interested in applying the strength of your programs. This year, we're also allowing you to showcase your mission statement, your extracurriculars, your sports, and all kinds of other details that would normally be found in a directory. So we think it's a great way for you to really showcase your school. If you are a DOE authorized school, the expectation is that you are participating in this school quality report, as any of the data points could be used in some kind of renewal report down the line. So just a reminder to folks, and because there is a data validation check when you submit, and it does break a link that requires manual resetting, we do encourage, even though the deadline is this Friday, that folks try and submit today or tomorrow, so that you have time to troubleshoot if necessary. Those are my reminders.
Just to put a plug in for Board of Regents authorized charter schools, and we've been speaking a lot about how to supplement any benchmark 1 information through interim assessments, but the DOE school quality survey is a great way that you can supplement your benchmark 3 information. So certainly if that's something that your school feels you're in need of, that might be a good strategy. And then to just go back to the to the Regents waiver reporting requirements. I would, if I could be the person, I'd be down on my knees begging you to please get that data in so that we can get your students the credit that they deserve to potentially graduate and to get those Regents under their belt. It's your students' hard work over the semester participating in those Regents-bearing courses. And so hopefully we can have 100% reporting so that we can recognize your students for that hard work.
Great. So I see 2 clarifications on that, and then I have a question I'll end with. So Erin, is there a method for entering SLP waivers?
So the SLP is an optional report to the state. And there was a way to enter it, but that expired in August. So currently there is no way to enter the SLP waivers. So we would encourage you to just keep very detailed notes on transcripts. Since that is a local exam anyway, it's different from the Regents waiver since that is the state exam.
And then I think Wendy is just asking clarification. The only thing that is due Friday, or is there 2 things due Friday?
So what is, yeah, and sorry. So I believe this is mapped out in the Charter School Weekly. I will double check just to make sure it's very clear, but this Friday is the school quality report collection. So that would be your K-8 and 9-12 Excel templates as applicable, and a short Google form just collecting information about your mission, your sports, your extracurriculars, all the other kind of fabulous stuff that will allow you to sell your school. Those are what is due this Friday. And then the Regents waivers are due September 18th, so a week later, to Eastern Suffolk BOCES. And I'm going to just reiterate and say the same thing over and over again. I've had a lot of reach out from schools that say we put it on the transcript, we gave the student the waiver. If the waiver is not reported to the state, the student does not have a waiver. You can put whatever you want on the transcript, it does not matter. Eventually down the line, the student will need to take that course and pass the test, even if it means that they cannot graduate on time. So I just want to be very, very clear. If the waiver is not reported to the state, it is not a waiver. The student will still need to take the test.
Thanks, Erin. So just there's one last question that came in for David, so I'll let him finish, but just want to clarify something about the issue of whether schools are going to be subject to the randomized testing program. So if everyone recalls, this was just announced a week ago that as part of the negotiation between UFT and DOE, UFT teachers would be returning to buildings to teach, so in-person instruction is going to begin again. But in exchange, there would be a randomized testing program, meaning that every month, some percentage of the staff and students at every DOE school would be subject to randomized COVID testing to see if there was a lot of occurrence of COVID-19 in the building. As part of the negotiation, it was also decided that any UFT DOE teacher who would not consent to be part of this would be immediately placed on unpaid leave, and any family that would not consent to having their child be part of this would be immediately placed into remote learning. So in my opinion, and the charter centers, that was a negotiated labor settlement that had nothing to do with DOH health and safety standards. So while I know DOE is still looking into what they're going to tell co-located schools, it is our position that this does not involve co-located charter schools. This was a negotiated labor settlement between the DOE and the UFT. I think what we've asked schools to do, particularly because there seems to be an interest from some of the schools that are co-located and also some schools that are in private space, if you want to be part of the program, you should be reaching out to DOE to make sure that you're on that list to see if you can partake in that, but realizing you'll have to do some internal work with your own families and staff about what it means if people are not wanting to participate. So that is all I can say about that for right now, but we will, keep tuned to that. But as of right now, there's been no announcement that co-located charters must also be a part of this randomized testing program. And with that,
is that a
David,
question for me?
No, that was mine.
Oh.
Yours got deleted, so I'll just say it. we had a question asking for updates on CSP.
Oh, see,
And-
I thought it wasn't deleted. I responded to it.
Oh, you responded to it. Well, then
I was
you
trying
can
to
tell
get-
us
an answer.
all.
Yeah.
I want to know what it is. Where is
Well,
it?
what I would say, never accept the premise of a question. What I would say is, Gloria asked, repeat the process for obtaining the Regents waivers. And Gloria, I would say the Eastern Suffolk BOCES people are more than happy to help you through that. They're actually a great bunch. And they have their website that I put in the chat. But Erin, any more information about Eastern Suffolk about the Regents waivers and Eastern Suffolk BOCES?
No, I mean, that's right. I think just so that folks understand what is being collected is it's basically a template that Eastern Suffolk BOCES will provide that is at the student and I think class level. And there's just a code that you pop right next to their name that says this student gets a, I don't know, earth science waiver. Boom, that's it. There's no like physical piece of paper that you are printing out and giving to a student or anything like that. It's similar to how you would report any other data to Eastern Suffolk BOCES through one of their templates, only this time it is Regents waiver data.
And regarding the CSP question, we said we're working on it. We'll have more information soon.
Thanks, David. Over to you, Yumika.
All right, great, thanks. So if there are no more questions or comments from the panel, I think this concludes our webinar for today. We're a little bit early. I will say this, see you Thursday. Check us out, 2D Law. And in the meantime, be well. See you then.
Bye, everyone.